Hey humans, it's Hannah. Welcome back to the second channel and welcome to day 2 of the 7 days of Halloween. Since we did all the formalities yesterday, we're going to get right into it today. Thank you so much for coming back. Hope you're enjoying and happy almost Halloween. Okay, story 1 for today starts off. Hi Hannah, you can call me Erinu. Thank you so much for putting the phonetical spelling there. It's not my real name, but my artist alias. I am a longtime subscriber and I have been watching your videos since the Time to Wait TikTok video from 4 years ago. Wow, that was a long time ago and only slightly embarrassing. My videos have changed and improved so much since then. But thank you so much for watching me and sticking with me. You're one of the few YouTubers I can confidently say I've watched every video from. My partner recently asked me who my favorite YouTuber was, and I said with zero hesitation, Hannah TheHorrible. Stop. That is so sweet. Okay, I'm a fellow skeptic also living in Seattle, and I find that we're very like-minded on most subjects. I was very excited to find your second channel and got to catch up on years worth of content. I, like many others, love to listen to you in the background while I work in my art, and it can be difficult at times to find good long-form videos to keep me focused. On to the stories. I relate to that so much. I always have YouTube on. I have 2 stories to share. When I was a child, my grandparents would take me and my siblings to visit my great-grandmother. We were always excited to visit our tiny little grandma who had a funny talking parrot and would give us popsicles while we ran around her house. What we didn't understand at the time was that she was suffering from the early stages of dementia. She never remembered who we were and would ask us our names at least 10 times per visit. But as children, we just chalked it up to her being a forgetful old lady. She remained independent, living in her own home up until the final few years of her life. Eventually, she was moved into my grandparents, where they took care of her until she passed away. I remember the news of her passing like it was yesterday. I grew up, moved away for college, and eventually moved back briefly. In that time, my sister, who I'll call M, and I would regularly have sleepovers at my grandparents' house. We would sleep in the room that my great-grandmother had stayed in while she was living with my grandparents. One night, I threw in the towel early and headed up to bed. My grandparents and M were all sitting in the living room playing on their DSs. Side note, my grandparents were the cutest. They used to stay up every night until midnight so they could play their daily word game on their DS. Now, the bedroom we would stay in has a large bed in the middle and a futon pushed up against the wall. Me, being an amazing big sister that I am, would sacrifice my comfort to let M sleep on the bed and I would take the futon. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice. That is just all little sisters like myself all around the world. Thank you for just how much you sacrifice for us. I was not tired enough to fall asleep at that point, so I was just scrolling on my phone. A little while later, I heard M come into the room and heard the creak of the bed as she sat down. I heard her furiously tapping away at her DS and heavy, uneven breathing. I said to her, "Wow, you must be really struggling with your game." M didn't respond, and so I sat up and repeated myself. But to my confusion, there was no one there. I got up and checked around the other side of the bed, put my ear against the wall, thinking maybe it was a pipe. I even looked under the bed, but there was nothing to explain the sound. I eventually made my way back downstairs and asked M, "Were you just upstairs?" But both her and my grandparents said that she had been in the living room with them the entire time. I told them what happened and my grandparents believed I had just fallen asleep, but I was awake the entire time. Em was too afraid to sleep in the bedroom after that. When I returned upstairs, I heard the breathing again. It sounded exactly like shallow, uneven breathing, almost like someone was sleeping on the bed. And I heard it every time I spent the night in that room after that. I never felt afraid. In fact, I almost felt a sense of calm whenever I slept in that room. And as someone who suffers from sleep paralysis, I didn't always get to experience a calm night of sleep. I did look into possible answers. The most common one is that people hearing whooshing in their ears as they fall asleep, but that didn't make sense as I also heard it when I was sitting up and only ever in that room. I really don't know what it was, possibly the wind, although I only ever heard it after she had passed and it did not sound like wind, an auditory hallucination, or something else. But part of me likes to believe that some piece of my great-grandma was left in that room. I now live across the country, but I would be interested in staying the night in that room again. Even now I get chills when I recount this story. Interesting. I mean, there is like you said, the whooshing sound that people hear when they fall asleep. That is possible, not as an explanation, but like that's, exploding head syndrome is the other thing that people experience. Some people have the unfortunate sleep disorder. I don't know if it's considered a sleep disorder, but an unfortunate thing where they hear a loud noise. It can be like a bang or a gunshot. It's an auditory hallucination. And when they're falling to sleep, they hear that, and that can be really disturbing to some, especially when they don't know that that is a normal thing that a lot of people experience. But that definitely doesn't sound like that. So breathing is interesting. That's so creepy. Yeah, I don't know what else that would be. It doesn't sound like it's the wind either, unless, like you said, the only logical explanation would be some sort of auditory hallucination. But yeah, very, very odd. Okay, my second story is a lot more tame. Fittingly, this story takes place on Halloween. Yay! When I was 14 and my brother D was 13, my mom decided that we were too old to go trick-or-treating. My uncle was in town and he decided to take us to see a Dracula play so that we could still do something fun for the holiday. While I was grumpy at the time, I look back fondly on this day, and I am currently planning on seeing a shadow cast with friends to kind of relive it. Anyway, the play was amazing, and I ended up having a great time by the end of the show. As we were leaving, my uncle decided to stop by the bathroom quickly and left my brother and I standing out in the hallway alone. We were talking about the play when this middle-aged, balding man approached us. He didn't exactly do anything, but my brother and I were both very uncomfortable, and we could feel that something was off. He asked us the time, and I started to answer, but he cut me off and said, "I wasn't talking to you. Now you," pointing to D, your brother, "tell me the time." D just repeated what I had said, and the man stormed off. When my uncle came out of the bathroom, we told him what happened and how the man was super weird. As we rounded the corner and were walking towards the door to leave, we saw the man crouched slightly over next to the wall like he was waiting for us. I believe that he thought that we were alone at the time. Yeah. But when he saw us leaving with our uncle, he walked off. Nothing ever came of it, and I don't know what that man's intentions were or what would have happened if we had actually been alone, but the entire situation felt very off. Bad vibes. I don't like that. Thank you for taking the time to read, even if you don't share in a video. I've only told the first story to a handful of people, so it feels nice to get it off my chest. If the storyteller is listening to this, I didn't want to read the last paragraph. It wasn't part of the story, but I didn't want to read it out loud. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to share that, but that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that. I will look it up. That is a little bit of ways away from me, but I will look up what you're talking about. That's very cool. Thank you for sharing. And thank you, Arinu, for your story. That's super creepy. Yeah, I don't like that guy. It did certainly sound like he was trying to see if you guys were alone or not, but I don't know why he would be mean, is the only thing that I'm pausing on. Isn't usually, maybe this is just a stereotype and I don't know how child abduction works, but aren't people that are trying to like get you to go, don't they usually trick kids by trying to be really nice to them? You know what I mean? The whole like trying to lure kids in their van with candy and stuff like that. That's just like my thought. Maybe it was just some really, really creepy guy. Maybe he wasn't going to do anything and he just was mentally ill or something. Yeah, either way, not good. And I'm so glad that you guys were okay. All right, our next submitter today, our story number 2 starts, "Hi, Hannah. My name is Amy. You actually read one of my stories during Halloween week. Oh, during your Halloween week last year. I'm the girl whose mom had a run-in with Fred West." Oh, yes. If you guys haven't seen that video, oh my gosh, that was one of the craziest stories we've ever read on this channel. I loved that story. Not that it was a fun story. It was an awful story, but oh my God, that was very, very crazy that there was somebody with a connection to Fred West and then wrote in. Very cool. Go listen to that story if you haven't already. That was a good one. Thank you for writing in again. Okay, a small update. Oh, so an update on the Fred West story. My mom recently watched the Netflix documentary on him, and it prompted her to look into it more. She spoke to her mom and her sister to get more information. Sadly, the babysitter has since passed away, so we can't get a lot, but it's better than nothing. Hopefully she can reopen the case and maybe bring more people to justice. Yes. Oh my gosh. So crazy. Okay, now the hereditary bad luck seems to go on, and I recently just got away from being in a cult. Oh, I am sat and ready. Okay. In my day-to-day, I'm in mortuary school. I live in a small, old European town, and I don't have a lot of friends. So when I got a job offer to work in an all-girls summer camp in South Texas, I jumped at it. After months of waiting and preparing, spending shitloads of money on clothes and flights, it was finally time to go. I should mention that I specifically asked if this was a religious camp since I wouldn't be comfortable with that, and I have many tattoos and piercings, which could be a no-go. I had to fly to DC and then San Antonio. The camp decided to put me and 8 other girls up in a hotel for the night, saying the drive was too far to complete at night, maybe the first red flag. The next day, a van pulled up outside the hotel and a woman got out, helped us in, and buttered us up with Whataburger and trips to Walmart. Very exciting for a bunch of young girls from Europe and Australia. Seriously. We then drove almost 2 hours to the middle of nowhere, marveling at the number of American and Texan flags, the signs outside of school saying that the teachers carry guns, and in beautiful views. As soon as we pulled up, we were greeted by the leader. We'll call her Jay. She was a sweet, older woman with a southern drawl and a very motherly energy. We immediately had to sign a bunch of contracts and forms, which was weird, but I ignored the uneasy feeling in my stomach, and I was put in a cabin with 11 girls. I unpacked and put on the uniform they gave me before we were called to the village, basically a big hall next to the head staff office where we were greeted. Now, I'll just skim through a lot of stuff since I was there for 5 weeks. Basically, picture 60 girls between 18 and 25, the majority from different countries. We were immediately thrown into orientation, 2 weeks of learning prayers, songs, ceremonies, which were pretty much rituals, and good manners. I was on the media team working 18 hours a day. We were instructed to only catch people smiling or we weren't around to post them. That we were obligated to film worship, which was a 2-hour service on Sunday mornings by Jay, where she preached, we sang and prayed. Also on Sundays, we had to wear all white down to our socks, shoes, and underwear. We also had to film all ceremonies. The first was opening day, and we had to stand in 2 lines holding up palm leaves as the kids walked in, all while singing. I won't go into too much detail or you'll be reading this all day, but it included fire, chanting, singing, and holding hands in a circle. No, go into all the details. I want to know everything. This seems so culty. What the hell? We also had to film Mountaintop. We filmed the girls in their sisterhoods chanting and screaming before sunset. Once the sun went down, they went up the hill alone. No counselors, no head staff. We were told that under no circumstances were we allowed to film or even set foot up there. They'd return an hour and a half later and run in circles chanting. We prayed before every meal, sang afterwards, woke up every morning at 7 a.m. to Deep in the Heart of Texas, the song, and basically worshiped the ground that Jay walked on. This is so Midsommar. I can't. The chanting and singing outside and screaming, that is so Midsommar. I eventually realized something wasn't right and I tried to leave, but they wouldn't let me. It took a week before they finally had enough of my fighting and let me go, but they made me leave the premises ASAP during a shelter in place. I could go on about all the weird stuff, but this email is long enough. I'm finally home, but I still have nightmares about it, about being trapped there. Yeah, I bet it crossed your mind that they weren't going to let you leave. That is so creepy. Thank you for taking the time to read this absolute unit of email. I hope that my misfortune is at least entertaining. Love everything you do, and I've been watching you from the start of your channel. The first video of yours that I watched was about blank room soup about 5 years ago. I'm in this for the long run, Amy. Again, people being OGs of the channel. Blank Room Soup was my first creepy video, like the first video that I made in my niche that made me decide to keep going down the creepy and disturbing niche. So that's wild. Again, thank you so much for sticking with me and like through my growth, because I can't watch my old videos. We'll just say that. Okay, Amy, please, if you're watching this, I would assume maybe you are, since since you're the Fred West person and have submitted twice. I'm really hoping you're watching this. Can you email me what the camp was called? I won't share it publicly because I understand if you don't want that shared, but I really, just for my own self, I really want to go read reviews and read about it and see what it's about. I want to know so bad. That is wild. Amy always coming with the fantastic stories. Oh, that's so creepy. Imagining a summer camp making the kids wear white, I think is what is like catching me up, because like the point of a summer camp is for young people, teens and kids to get dirty. Like that's the point, is to have fun during the summer where they get to do all these shenanigans. Like, isn't the point to like get dirty? And I don't know, just like the all white things feels like this weird purity thing. And oh, I want to know more so bad. Oh, that's crazy. Okay, let's move on. The next story starts, "Hey, Hannah, I'm happy to add to the list of people that thank you for your content, your respectful approach to true crime, and simply being an outlet for distraction during hard times. I would like to stay anonymous, and you can call me Ducky. I've included 3 stories that you can choose from. The first one is sort of silly, the second is dark, and the third is darker. They're in chronological order. I hope you enjoy." Thank you, Ducky. I think we're just going to read all the stories. I think we're just going for it. Okay, Ducky's first story says, "Pink lemonade. My first story takes place when I was a single-digit age, maybe 8 or 9. My older sister Jay and I were running a lemonade stand in our very suburban neighborhood outside our house. As you've described in past videos, our patrons also only consisted of walkers with no money on them or children on bikes with no interest in sharing their allowances or their own lemonade stand money with us, even if they had looked our way." Yeah, we have talked about that before. I'm just going to reiterate here too. If you see a lemonade stand of kids in your neighborhood or something like that, if you like drive by on your way home, my mom taught me this. Almost always she will go get $1 or $2 and go bring it to the kids and like buy some lemonade. We'll like go on a walk and make sure that we bring some money that we can give them. Just like, even if you're not going to drink the lemonade, like, and you want to, it's 25 cents or 50 cents and you give them $1 or even $5, like, I can you will make that kid's summer. I don't know. I just think it's one of those things that like kids go into it looking like so hopeful and like they're working hard. They're trying to like work for their money. They might be saving up for something. Maybe they just really want a candy bar. Like, I don't know. Just, you know what I mean? Normalize like making kids' days. Okay. Anyway. Okay. It was midsummer, midday, and about $4 into our business when my sister and I argued about who would go inside to get more ice and cheap pink lemonade powder, which we didn't even find remotely tasty ourselves. What do you mean? That stuff's so good. I love that. I'll drink it. The sun was beating down and neither of us wanted to move, especially myself, who didn't have the older sister privilege of having a chair. Also, lots of older sisters in this video. I did not mean to pick several stories about with older sisters airing their grievances for having to sacrifice for their younger sister. As a younger sister, I do apologize. Okay. The argument was settled by a distraction. Down the block, we both set eyes on our potential customer. This wouldn't have stopped our arguing had it not been for his attire. He was wearing a full suit, tuxedo? I don't know. I was too young to know the difference, which was accompanied by a tasteful accessory of a bag and what looked like restaurant leftovers, a thin white grocery bag with the styrofoam white box inside. Odd detail, I know, but it stuck with me. I don't know what my sister was thinking. As I was more focused on his route towards us, he soon made his way up to our stand and greeted us. Nothing was too notable about the beginning of this interaction other than the regular unsettling feeling you get in your stomach as a kid when an adult smiles at you and makes conversation. My sister and I, 2 little girls, awkwardly went about business and offered him a deliciously refreshing beverage for the irresistible deal of just 25 cents. He smiled, and I hated that. Not sure why, but I hated that. Now, folks had told us before that they didn't want any lemonade, don't blame them, and would sometimes generously give us $1 or even a 5 if they were our neighbors and probably felt guilty pretending they didn't see us. However, this man in his full suit and bag of leftovers told us that he did not want any lemonade. He handed my sister a $20 bill, smiled again, and in a quieter voice than at first said simply, "I'll be back." At our age, we were drilled with stranger danger lessons from our parents, but on this occasion that seemed to escape us, and instead we saw dollar signs. The next thing I remember is bursting through the front door and calling for my mom to tell her that we had made $24 already. She said, "Wow," in a cautious tone and asked us how we managed that. I quickly and excitedly told her that some man in a suit gave us a $20 bill for no lemonade and that he would be back. I'm sure my mother loved to hear that. Anyway, we decided to call the cops. Oh. The rest is blurry as the dollar signs in my eyes went away, and then I was beginning to replay the events in my head and flipping out. I asked my mom if I could talk to the officers, which, thinking about that now, how Nancy drew of me. Between sobs, not as Nancy drew of me, I told them what happened. Nothing came of this that I'm aware of. So far as I'm concerned, I got $20 and a fun story. Why does she call the cops? Like, that is... A man in a suit, like, is kind of weird, don't get me wrong, but I do kind of wonder if he just was a rich dude that wanted to give kids some money. I don't know, maybe that's just me. I also wasn't there, so I don't know if you were, like, getting a creepy vibe or whatever, but my first thought is, like, that escalated quickly. I don't know if I would have called the cops I don't know. I guess if I had seen him, I would have, of course, I'm not judging because who knows? I wasn't there. Maybe I'm missing something. That is creepy, but like, he didn't actually do anything or like say that he was going to do anything. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. Okay. Your second story is titled Moldy Frat Dude. The second story takes place in my early college days. I had visited a few frats before, but it was my first time visiting this particular one. They were known to be particularly sketchy, but I'm not the first to lack self-respect in college. This property had its partying in the basement, of course, and the walls were wet to the touch, lined with a dark mold, and the floors were almost as sticky as the hanging fly traps. Oh, college. I was with three friends, we'll call them K, K's cousin, and E. This place was disgusting and definitely not the destination for one of the guys to ask me out to coffee. I declined but allowed him to tag along as we left that place as quickly as we got there. The guy that asked me out for coffee had known me previously, and he had requested that I paint a fraternity paddle to look like a liquor bottle, which inspired another member of that frat to ask the same of me. Because of this, they had to come to my apartment to pick up the paintings. My first mistake. That's kind of genius, though. To paint a paddle like a bottle. That's kind of cool. Okay. The night was certainly not young, but we were. My friends wanted to keep hanging out, so I offered to host at my tiny place with a bottle of wine and some cards. We made it a plan and began to walk back in that direction. E and Moldy Frat Dude said that they would be right back, running to their respective fraternities to pick up something. I don't know, I just said, okay, whatever. Kay, however, being very emotional when she drank, started blubbering about a guy that didn't like her back. I guess her cousin had that same disposition and joined in on the sobbing sesh. Those two were down for the count as they decided to walk home instead, promising to text me when they got back safe. E messaged me that he wanted to go to bed, and I honestly shared the sentiment, so I messaged Moldy Frat Dude that he should not swing by as the night was over. I've had some drunk friends in the past that always get emotional when they drink. They always start crying. None of my friends do that now, but back in college, there were always those few people that always got so introspective and so emotional, always started crying, and I had no patience for it. Okay, to my surprise, he responded, "I'm on my way." Ugh. I replied, hoping I didn't text loud enough, to which I said, "Nah, don't come over, no one else is coming, and I'm going to bed." He replied, happy that it would be just the two of us. Ew, after you declined his coffee ask out? Ew. Your girl locked her doors and closed the blinds real quick. He and I messaged back and forth with more of the same. I'm on my way. No, you're not. I'm almost here. Go home. Oh my God. Ew. Oh, I don't like this at all. I was horrified at this point. At the time, I lived on the first floor of a very sketchy studio apartment with glass sliding doors dressed with blinds that didn't close all the way. As if I wasn't freaking out enough, he sent me a video of him breathing with the camera pointing at his feet as he walked through grass. I knew that he had to be nearby, so I hid under the bathroom sink, being that this was the only place out of view from the sliding window or near my actual door. I cried and called a friend, keeping him on the line as I received several calls from Moldy Frat Dude that I did not answer. This friend decided to make his way to my apartment as he lived very close. It was a race at this point to see who could get to my apartment first. Because of bad experiences with police, it didn't even cross my mind to call them. I then received another video from Moldy Frat Dude. This time, the camera was aimed between the crack in my blinds, panning my apartment as he said, "I shit you not. Where are you hiding? Come on out," in a sing-songy voice. My friend then arrived. I heard a scuffle outside, something like, "She asked you to leave," and "No, she told me to come over. Who the fuck are you?" He eventually left. I had my friend call me again and show that it was him and only him outside before I let him inside. Kay was on her way at this point, having been told what happened, and we didn't get much sleep. Oh my God. I am so sorry this happened to you. That's disgusting. And then men are like, "Why don't women want to date me?" It's like, yeah. The next morning, I decided that I really should at least report this to get documentation. Should this happen again to someone else, I looked him up on Instagram and saw he had a girlfriend. How classy. I messaged her explaining what happened, that I was sorry that she had to hear it from me, yada yada. She apologized for him and explained that she was not in a good situation with him. Shocker. Twist of the century. I figured. After getting off the phone with the police, being told that I needed his phone number, full name, and date of birth to make a report, I messaged her back asking for these things very awkwardly. Again, to my surprise, she simply asked, "What for?" I told her for the police, and she said okay and sent the information without hesitation. I wished her luck in the situation and found a new apartment. I hope she was okay. Listen, I know every time stories like this come up, and a lot of these stories come up, people joke that on this channel it's either a paranormal story or some story about a man being creepy. Listen, I welcome stories of women being creepy, and we've done stories of that too. Remember the longest story I've ever read on this channel of a woman grooming a child, not for sexual reasons, but for we don't know exactly, but for something nefarious. So it's just that men are statistically more likely to be creepy like this. I think if you ask any woman in your life and tell them this story, every single woman will say, "I can relate to this in some way," or "I knew a guy that did this or did something creepy like that." I've told you guys many stories over the years of my own experiences. And I heard this the other day. I can't remember who said it, but it really resonated that it's like, no, it's not all men. We're not saying that. It's not all men, but it's always a man. Okay? It's always a man. Again, technically, some women can be creepy as well, but you get it. Like, that's what we mean when we say that, is that we're not saying all men in the world suck. Most of us actually really, really love the men in our lives and think that the men that we do know, that's how we know that these men are creepy, because we know good men, because we have good men who are good people to compare them to. But it's just when every single one of your friends has been stalked, harassed, essayed, or worse, every single person you know has had some sort of story like this. I would love somebody to go around a group of 30-year-old men and ask the same question to see if they've been stalked, harassed, essayed, or worse by a woman. A couple of them, yes, probably. Statistically speaking, I'm sure some, women can also be just as terrible of perpetrators. But the odds of every single man having an experience in that group is pretty low. That's what I'm saying, is that the next time somebody seems angry at men, it's because we have had scary experiences with men, and it makes it hard to trust. To the writer of the story, I'm just so sorry that this happened to you. The fact that he couldn't take no for an answer, you already said that you weren't interested. You told him not to come, and then to go anyway is such wild behavior, and it makes me very, very, very concerned about what his plans for if he had been in your apartment, even with your group of friends, even if you all had gone to go have wine and have cards. It creeps me out to think that he would have likely tried to encourage everybody else to leave and stay past. Yeah, I don't like this at all. The fact that he has a girlfriend is that's messed up, but not surprising. Not saying that's fine. Obviously that's messed up, but just very much on par with this type of person, in my opinion. So, okay. And your last story, you said it gets funny, dark, and then darker. So this is supposedly the darkest story. So I'm kind of nervous since that middle story was pretty dang dark. Okay. The street lamp. My last story is quite dark, and I have to add a trigger warning for domestic violence and threats of S word. So Okay, everybody, skip to story 4 if you don't want to hear about DV and threats of S-word. Later in my college career, one of my many mistakes was my now ex. We'll call him L, fitting, and we broke up on very scary terms, consisting of me just begging him to get out of my apartment as I was on the line with someone close to me, making sure I was safe in the process. As unfortunately common as it is, I experienced the days following being filled with guilt and his threats of S-word. As naive but human as I was, I kept in contact with him in fear of the worst. Yeah, unfortunately, that's a tactic that abusers and toxic people use. They threaten that, like, you're in control of whether they do something awful to themselves, and it's manipulation, of course, if you don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Most of you guys probably know that already, I would assume. But if anybody in your life, if you have a relationship with somebody and they ever threaten that as a result of you leaving or you doing this or that, then run away if you can as fast as possible. That is a blood red flag, as I like to call them. Not just a red flag, but a blood red flag. Okay, one night he told me that he was coming over. I had taken his key from him. He was not on the lease. I had given him a spare, but I was still afraid because I had in fact not invited him over. What is with these men just trying to get in your place without your permission? He insisted that I needed him and that he was worried about me because I was no longer responding to him. I wonder why. He was messy and toxic, but I really did not think that he would show up as he lived 30 minutes away, which he complained was quite a ways, especially at night. Nonetheless, I received a text. Then another text, then another. I then got a call, then another, and another, and another. I received somewhere around 20 to 30 texts and about a dozen calls. Not too bad, given my mother's record of 61 phone calls in 3 minutes. But I digress. I don't know what I was thinking. I knew better than to answer his messages or calls, but I didn't even cross my mind to contact anyone at all. I clutched my journal, what kept me sane-ish through that relationship, and sat on my bed with a pen, trembling, making tally marks. Each tally mark was represented by the time I had heard a knock at my door. Only once had I gotten the courage to confirm through my peephole that it was, in fact, my ex. My tally marks reached 36, with a separate group of tallies to mark the time where he was very obviously checking to see if my door was unlocked by turning the knob. I'm shocked he didn't have a key. When you gave him a spare key, I'm honestly shocked that he didn't make his own key off of the spare key to use. But I guess story's not over. I watched and listened as the knob jingled and jostled about with clicking noises that resembled his lock-picking skills he had bragged to me about in the past. I closed my eyes so tight, covered my head with a pillow, and told myself that it wasn't real, even played games on my phone, practiced breathing exercises, and inevitably stared out my window in a dissociative state, concentrating on the street lamp right outside my window that, for as long as I lived there, would always turn on and off at unpredictable times, illuminating the red brick of my apartment whenever it felt like it. I wasn't a motion sensor, it was a street light, and no other lights in my apartment complex did this. I figured that it was broken and others had complained about it before. It was enough to keep my focus away from crying. The noises of metal on metal occurred a handful of times before he finally gave up after 3 hours. Oh my God. Of course, I got the "why didn't you call the cops" conversation from my friends later, but I guess I didn't want to upset him. I don't know. It was a strange time in my life. I will never, ever, ever ask somebody, "Why didn't you call the cops?" when it involves a not cut and dry situation. I would say if it involves like a very obvious stranger jumping out with a knife. Obviously, most people, it's reasonable to expect somebody to call the police at that point. If it involves somebody that you can hate a person and love them kind of too, or you think that you love them or care about them, and you're just, when you're in it, it's just so different. It's just like dating. When you like somebody, if there's a glaring red flag, your friends can tell you all day that they're not a good person to date, that this is a bad idea. But especially when you're young or haven't lived through a lot of relationships that are, toxic or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, you're just like, you're looking at them through rose-colored glasses and your friends aren't, Like, obviously, it would have been ideal to call the police and have them come and remove him. But I can also understand your fear of, like, if you did that, is he going to come back tenfold? Is he going to make it worse? Can he manipulate the cops into letting him in? Can he manipulate the cops into getting you to open the door? I mean, cops have done that in the past. You don't know the cops. You don't know if they're going to be like, oh yeah, like if he could, the Brian Laundries of the world, or Jeffrey Dahmer, who used to do that and he used to manipulate the police into handing his victims over to him. That's extreme, obviously, but I do understand that. We'll never judge you for that. Okay. Anyway, the very next night, and after adding 2 more locks to my door with help of a friend, I had the same friend over to make me feel safer for obvious reasons. He was sitting on my porch. I was rocking the 3rd floor these days while I was in my room chatting with friends over a Discord call. My lights were off in my room and I was winding down for the night. I got a FaceTime from my ex and, against my better judgment, picked up. He told me that he had taken my advice from 2 nights prior when he had threatened the S word and I called the police, that he takes walks outside rather than sitting in his room all day. I could see that he was clearly outdoors, and it truly made my heart happy to see him doing something for his mental health. Although it was late at night, I took the win and told him that I was proud of him. I asked him where he was walking, to which he described his neighborhood 30 minutes away. This is when I got a sick feeling in my stomach and feel nauseous writing this even now. It was so dark wherever he was, but I could clearly see that he was walking alongside a brick wall. My stomach lurched. He tilted the camera up a bit and I recognized the sighting above the brick as that is my own building. I tried my best to play it cool and ask him to show me any plants around him or any animals that he could see. I had taken off my headphones at the beginning of this FaceTime from my Discord call and even muted my friends on the other line, but they were listening intently. My ex then asked me if I had friends over. I said no and leaned over to my window. I didn't dare peek the blinds open. Instead, I looked through the gap between the edge of the window and the blinds. Phone in hand, I looked down, my ex's camera pointing upwards towards his face with the familiar street lamp above him. I watched as the lamp in his video turned off at the same time as the lamp outside of my bedroom window did. I couldn't ignore what I feared anymore. I played it less cool and demanded that he tell me where he was. He insisted that he was walking around his neighborhood. I got a knock on my bedroom door. My friend wanted to tell me that he could have sworn he just saw Elle pass underneath him on the porch. I bolted from my bedroom to the living room and looked out the patio sliding door to see a figure I knew well, in a sweatshirt that I had worn countless times, looking down at a phone, pass under another streetlight, leading out of my apartment complex, disappearing behind another building. I demanded that Elle turn around and go directly backwards in the direction that he had just come in. I feigned a okay, whatever you say attitude and did as he was told. He was a horrible liar. I yelled at him to do as I said and walk back to where he had just been. At this point, I had opened my sliding door and could even hear his voice outside responding to me on his phone. I screamed at him to leave me alone and hung up. This time, I did call the cops. I described what happened, and they sent somebody immediately. Upon arrival, they told me that they had found him on foot and talked to him in a neighboring parking lot right next to my building. After telling him about the previous couple nights, they too gave me the lecture of calling the police when things like this happened. Well, if the police want us to call them so bad, then maybe be more reliable and stop creating all the horror stories that make us scared to call the police. They followed this up by, oh so kindly, giving me a flyer about DV. So glad I called. So much sarcasm. I spent a lot of time after these incidents becoming an advocate for those DV situations and educating audiences on our word culture and active bystanding. Thank you for reading, as I know that these were a bit lengthy, and I'm sorry for my messy writing style. I'm tired. Ducky. I thought your writing was perfect. Great. I could follow along. There was punctuation, not much more I could ask for. Those are some terrifying stories. Ducky, thank you so much for spreading the word about DV and your experience, because that could have been worse. We'll just say that. That could have escalated and gotten way worse than it did. Thank God you were safe inside both times that he was stalking you, because this is stalking and harassment. You asking him to leave and him not leaving is officially harassment. So I hate this for you, and I am hoping that you're doing well now and that everything's a lot better and that you've had better relationships since this incident, because you deserve them. All right, we're going to read one more story for today because we had a couple really, really long stories today. This one goes, Dear Hannah, I'd like to preface this by saying that English is my second language and I've never been a great storyteller. So if I start jumping from a subject to another, feel free to edit this story. I don't mind my name being said since I'm going to use a nickname. So let's get the story going. I'm Venus, she, her, and this story is actually about my mother, who is in her late 50s now. I feel like this story has some important context around it, so here's some backstory. My mom has always had, since childhood, a rocky relationship with her parents. If I had to explain it with more modern terms, I'd say that I was the scapegoat of a narcissistic mother and an enabling father whom seemed to care more about my aunt, her sister, especially after a childhood incident my aunt had. Oh, okay. So this is your mom's grandparents. So your mom's mom was narcissistic and your mom's dad enabled her, and they seem to care more about your mom's sister than her. Okay. So she found solace in a relationship with her maternal grandmother, Stella, a caring, loving, and warm person, as she'd been described to me. I'd never met her, but just to see the love and affection my mom had for Stella when she talks about her. Fast forward a few years, and my mom is in her mid-20s, and Stella has recently passed away. My mom's devastated, but also occupied with her new marriage, one that with time is destined to fail, but not before this event. My mom was trying to conceive, fulfilling a dream that she had had for a long time, being a better mother than hers was. It took months, years, and one night, she dreamed Stella. Nothing else was around them, just this dark, starry void as her grandmother approached her. She just smiled and told my mom with the warmest, proudest voice imaginable, "I'm so happy for you." My mom woke up and in a few days, she realized her period was late. She was pregnant and my sister came along some months later, and with another couple years, she finally divorced. She never had a dream about Stella before that event and never dreamed about her after that. She's not a religious person, and honestly, nor am I, but I really feel like that night Stella came down from wherever she was to bring the good news to my mom. And this is it. Not a scary story, I guess, but still in the paranormal realm. I can't wait to hear what you think about it. Love your videos. Give a nice big smooch to your fur babies for me. Bye. And that was from Venus. Thank you, Venus. Really lovely to send us off on a happier note. I do love those predicting dreams because WTF, but I'm so glad that you and your sister are now here because your mom wanted to be a better mother than her mom. I think that's, I love that a lot of people have kids with that in mind, trying to be a better parent than their parents were, because we can always learn and we can always do better. Even good parents are not perfect parents. So, okay, I'm going to end this video here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow for day 3. Okay, bye.